in early dating in particular, people get it wrong where they're like, oh my God, we had a fight, or I'm not feeling 100% attracted to this person like I did, and so they must not be the one. Okay, so I got to go find someone new. And then they'll go through that roller coaster again.
Hello, and welcome to the Jocelyn Moore Show. I'm your host, Jocelyn Moore, and as always, we're here to inform, inspire, and entertain with dynamic conversations that matter. Today, we're diving deep into shadow work, healing men's isolation with guest Jason Lange, founder of Evolutionary Men, men's environment coach, and group facilitator. Welcome, Jason. Welcome to the show.
So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So let's get started. Let's start with, what is the best evolutionary lesson you learned from your worst piece of advice?
Yeah, sure. I would say it shows up in two places in my life. One is this: I do a lot of work with men around dating and relationships and, creating a thriving partnership. And where this plays out in the dating life that I sometimes experienced early on is this idea that we should be inauthentic to date someone. So it's like, don't show too much eagerness when you're dating someone, right? Because you want to make sure they like you first so you can get into a relationship and then you can really be yourself. And turns out that's terrible advice, because then what we're actually doing is attracting partners who aren't aligned with who we actually are, in a sense. And that was a painful lesson I learned early in kind of my dating journey, and instead now shift towards, what works better is to be your full authentic self early on. And what you'll find is not as many people will match and be a fit with you, but the people who do are much more aligned with who you are. So this willingness to be authentic. And then, another one I'll say, it's kind of a funny phrase that's somewhat related, but man, it does not do well for relationships, is this idea of happy wife equals happy life. And how I see that show up in a lot of my clients is this idea that my job more than anything else is just to appease and keep my partner happy, which just my reframe on that is fulfilled wife equals happy life. And fulfillment is something very different than happiness, because happiness is a feeling that kind of comes and goes, but any long-term relationship is going to have points where you feel really happy and connected with each other, and points that are frankly a little hard and challenging where you don't feel connected. But fulfillment is a frame, anyone who's ever been a parent gets this. Being a parent isn't necessarily fun most of the time. It's exhausting, demanding, we get triggered. But in my experience, it's incredibly fulfilling, right? The feeling is, it's worth it to go through those challenging moments because of how amazing it is to support a little human being and becoming themselves in this world. In a relationship, I think, is the same way, where if we're not focused so much on happiness, but it feels so fulfilling to be in this, even through the high moments and the low moments, that's what really makes it worth it to me. And that changes the frame a little bit from always just trying to keep things happy to actually, no, sometimes we have to have big fights or come into conflict or get really honest about changes we need to make in our life to keep things really healthy between us and to keep that deep level of fulfillment. So 2 pieces of kind of advice that have filtered through my life that I had to learn the hard way to think differently about.
When you talk about be yourself when you're out, like on the first date, you find like a lot of people are afraid to be themselves because if they are themselves, then it's not a second date.
Yeah, I think it's a real kind of calculation a lot of people make. Again, because the feeling is, I want to be whatever I think I need to be for this other person to feel attracted to me or want to be with me. And the problem with that is then, right, sometimes, and I've worked with guys, let me just be frank, sometimes it takes 3 months, 6 months, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 decades of committed partnership and marriage that, wow, actually, I'm going to finally come forward and be authentic about what I want or what I desire or what's important to me. And then we find out, and my partner's not aligned to that. at all. And then that relationship ends up, having some real struggles. So my thing is it's better to rip the Band-Aid off sooner. And yeah, you might get more no's up front, but the yeses you get will be so much more aligned to who you really are. And then you won't have to be spending all this mental and emotional energy trying to calculate who should I be so this other person will like me. And instead, what I've found in myself and most people I work with is we want to be in relationships where we can just be our authentic self and our partner fully embraces us for who we are. And that feels really good when someone does that and when we get to do that back and forth. But a lot of times there is a lot of fear about rejection underneath of, okay, if I really showed him how excited I was, or if I really told her what I thought about X, Y, or Z, is she going to like that? And she might not. And then we have to feel that sense of, okay, this partner wasn't the right fit for me, but there's someone else out there who probably is. So my job is to keep being myself and getting in front of potential partners.
So tip of my tongue, I wanted to ask you. Oh, some people feel that. I'm not gonna tell you what show I was watching, but anyway, I was talking about. They were saying it was a couple. Well, he was really nice, in the beginning, but now a few months later, he's not that same person. They would say it's the same person, but I guess it could go both ways, right? It's the same person, but he was afraid to, and women are afraid to really show their, like he was saying, authentic selves, their selves, their true self, you know. And
Yeah,
a lot of,
that's a real thing.
people do. So how do you handle that with men, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I think there's also a reality thing there, right? We have this phrase in our culture, the honeymoon phase.
Yes,
And
yes, that's
it's
what it is.
this kind
Yeah,
of
more like.
it's this kind of myth in a sense, because no matter who you are and what relationship you get into, there will be a point where you get to a certain level of closeness or intimacy or commitment with each other, that phase kind of comes to an end. And all that really means is the way our bodies and hormones and connections are made. When we first meet someone, new love, we are flooded with all these hormones that make us want to stay close to them and energize us in terms of erotic energy and just make it feel like this person's really special. But every relationship, every intimate relationship in particular, at some point, that wears off. And what comes up is, what is the unresolved attachment wounding I have from my childhood and how I was raised in my previous experiences that I never dealt with. And I don't care how careful you are, who you think you're picking the right person, you're both going to come to that at some point where anything that's unresolved or unhealed between the two of you will start to come up in the relationship. I'll get triggered. My partner will get triggered. My trauma will come up. She'll trauma will come up. My protective mechanisms will come up. Her protective mechanisms will come up, really in any couple. And the key is to realize this is where a lot of, in early dating in particular, people get it wrong, where they're like, oh my God, we had a fight, or I'm not feeling 100% attracted to this person like I did, and so they must not be the one. Okay, so I got to go find someone new. And then they'll go through that roller coaster again without actually addressing the deep inner work that needs to happen underneath. And instead, when we realize, oh, actually, no matter who I date, this is going to come up. And so what I want to find is a potential partner that's willing to do the work to really become available and heal some of our own relational and familial patterns and traumas, and says, hey, I know I have these issues. I get really triggered around X. And my partner's like, oh yeah, and I get really triggered around X. This is what I'm working on. This is what you're working on. And suddenly we realize, oh, well, the real gift of the relationship is not some magical, mythical Hollywood thing where this stuff never comes up. It's finding a partner who we can actually do the deep work to heal some of these patterns that for some of us go back to our very early childhood. And that intimate relationship is actually one of the most powerful places to do that when we do it consciously and with the wisdom of, okay, yeah, this is stuff I have to work on. And I've worked with many guys, right, who didn't quite realize that till maybe third or fourth marriage or relationship, and then finally have that light bulb moment of, wait a second, this thing keeps happening every time I go out and create a relationship. Maybe, just maybe, I have something to do with that. right? There's some way I'm showing up that's creating this pattern over and over. So what if I take a look inside and decide to kind of examine what I'm bringing to the table? And then lo and behold, that often changes who's attracted to us and who we're attracted to, because we start to find partners who are willing to take responsibility for their side too.
So you're saying that the man, I'm just talking about men because that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, for
That
sure.
it's like, it's her problem. She's the one with the problem. It's not me. Just like you said, they're not really sitting, what you call it? Think about what they have done. It's always her
Taking
problem, but
responsibility.
taking
Yeah.
responsibility. They don't realize. Sometimes they don't realize it. It's her without taking a breath and really thinking about it. And for the groups, they do need the men's group, let's say. They do need let's say everyone, women too, need women's groups.
Yeah, we all need community.
Men's group try to understand each other. I guess first you have to try to understand yourself first.
Yes. Yeah,
you have to
absolutely.
start with that. Uh-huh.
And that's the beauty of when both partners are willing to take responsibility for, hey, you know what? I realize I have some patterns, some behaviors that contribute to whatever tensions we're feeling in our relationship. You can pretty much work with anything when both partners are willing to kind of own their part. Anytime it's one person saying it's all that person's fault, my, red flags go off pretty immediately, because it's rarely ever 100% one person's fault. It's like a math equation. They always relate, right? Some of my behaviors, one of the most classic ones we see in relationships is anxious attachment and avoidant attachment, right? One person gets anxious about the relationship, so they reach in needing reassurance. That triggers the other person's avoidant. They actually step back like, oh my God, that's too intense for me, which then triggers the other person to feel like you're abandoning me. And then the whole cycle just kind of goes up. Whereas both partners have an opportunity to say, hey, yeah, you know what? Sometimes I get flooded and I feel a little avoidant, like I want to eject from the relationship. And the other partner says, wow, yeah, sometimes actually I get a little anxious when I don't need to, that you might abandon me. I'm realizing there's some things I could do. I could call up my friend, my mom, my girlfriend, my therapist, whatever, and talk about some of these feelings. And then, turns out I was just making a big deal out of nothing. Turns out we actually feel great and I just misinterpreted this text or whatever. But it's a great power when both partners are willing to do that. And community is, like you said, one of the most powerful ways we can also get those reflections from the outside, from other people who see us and know our patterning. So, right, in the men's groups I lead, okay, maybe I've had a marriage or two or some relationships, and then I'm in the early phase. And then the guys who know me and know my history are like, I'm seeing some of the red flags for some of the experiences you've had in the past. Like, does that feel true for you? And then I'm like, oh, wait, you're right. I'm doing the same thing over again. I thought I was doing something else, but here's that same pattern showing up. And then we can work with it, right? Once I'm aware of it, I can take some kind of different action in that relationship or get support in some way we need. But sometimes it's hard for us to see our own patterns, which is why it's really useful to have community, coaches, therapists, and even intimate partners who become deeply aware of often our patterns. You realize every time you say that thing, you do that thing with your face, and I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, yeah, no, you do. And I'm like, oh, wait, I do. You're totally right. I have a total reaction to when you offer me feedback or whatever that might be. So it's one of the great gifts of partnership and any kind of relationship.
You said something a little earlier about growing up. That has a lot to do with it too, because men would see how their parents' relationship is. And that has a lot to do with it until they discover themselves. Until they sit back and discover who they are. And a lot of it's just built in for years over years over years. It's hard for them to shake that too.
Yeah, this stuff it's deep patterns and habits of our nervous system. So whatever family system we were raised in, whatever configuration of it, when we're young, we get used to it and we actually normalize it in a sense of this feeling in my body emotionally, in terms of my nervous system, etc. This is what home feels like. Mm-hmm. This is what love feels like. Mm-hmm. And that goes in deep. So then we become adults, and without realizing it a lot, we will actually seek out partners who recreate that same feeling
Mm-hmm.
in our body because it's what we know as home and love. The challenging thing is we'll do that even when that feeling state isn't one we really want,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, oh my God, I was raised in a really volatile household or a household with a lot of neglect. Turns out without awareness, we'll go out and keep recreating that same type of relationship where, in a sense, if we're not really conscious, we're either just dating our mom and dad or we're
Mm-hmm.
playing out the script of their relationship over and over because it's the only one we've ever known. And it's why it's so important for us to do this work to become aware of the habits and patterns and lessons we learned as kids and the wounds we carry, right, around where we weren't met with love or presence or whatever the different things we need. Because without that, we will just keep recapitulating that every
Over and over.
relationship until we learn to work with it a different way and come forward in different ways.
So how long did it take? How many years did it take for you to get to this point before starting
Sure.
the the different men's group?
Huh? Yeah, I got into men's work and men's groups in my 20s and kind of got onto a personal growth path because I was raised, white guy, lower middle class, outside Chicago suburbs, had a lot of my basic security needs met and a lot of privilege in some ways. What my family didn't have, which became aware to me as I became an adolescent and got into my teenage years, is no emotional connection and no physical connection. So there wasn't much touch, hugging, affection. There was not real talk about what we were feeling or what was going on inside. It was just kind of like we all lived in the same house and everything was kept kind of in a very German way, part of my lineage, like under the surface. So you just don't talk about it. And so then I became a teenager. And in my case, I'm heterosexual, interested in women, and I would freeze. My body would get anxious. I would get clammy. I was really uncomfortable with touch. I didn't know how to share my feelings, and I could not have successful relationships. So I was single, and I didn't kiss my first partner till I was in college. I didn't have my first real relationship until my late 20s. I was just I didn't know how to do it. I never had it modeled for me, and my parents weren't affectionate with each other at all. And so that led me to, I don't know how to do this thing. I see other people getting into relationships and I just can't do it. And it was very painful for me. So I had to start this inner journey of, well, what's going on inside my body and my nervous system that creates this? And so that got me into somatic therapy, into men's work, into learning to share my feelings and talk about things. And I was on that trajectory for, probably a good decade before, honestly, I just started talking about it so much to everyone I met. Like, I'm in a men's group. It's awesome. I love it. It's helped me in these ways. It's helped me navigate some big challenges in life that guys in particular started asking me, can I come? Can I join? I want to be in it. And I literally didn't have room. Like, we would meet in my buddy's therapist office and it was just room for 8 guys. So I was like, well, maybe I'll start a different one where different men can come and enjoy and get to share in some of the benefits of this modality I've experienced. So I just started leading them. I was in Los Angeles at the time, out of my living room in middle of LA, and I'd post them on meetup.com. And I, worked with so many men over the years and then realized I really enjoyed this and got some additional training, became an actual coach and started my company. And now this is what I'm just passionate about doing, is helping men get into community with other men and particularly join these men's groups where we get to learn and practice all these skills for what we're feeling in our body and our hearts, share it, communicate it, get feedback, get support when we're feeling down, be held accountable when there's something important we want to move forward, and essentially just become more effective at life and get more connected. Because so many men just try to keep everything inside, try to be tough, try to be the sole provider. I can't share any weakness. And that, frankly, it's not even just a mental thing. Like, it's quite damaging for men in our health. It's as dangerous as that kind of loneliness is as dangerous as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day in terms of heart disease. And they've shown that men who kind of prescribe to these traditional stoic lone wolf, tough cowboy ideals, they're like twice as likely to commit suicide as well. So it has a huge cost on our well-being, this being vulnerable, don't ever ask for help kind of thing that so many men live with. And community is really the antidote to that when we realize, oh, wait, I don't have to learn and figure out everything out on my own. And instead of spending 3 hours trying to figure out this thing, I can just ask someone for help and they can solve it for me in like 20 seconds sometimes. Lesson I've had to learn, over and over as a stubborn man of, no, I'll figure it out. It's just like, no, just ask someone for help. And they're like, you just do this. And it's like, oh, great. Now I just did that in 2 minutes rather than 3 hours. And my life is better.
About the shadow work. What is shadow work? What is shadow work, and how can it improve a man's life?
Yeah, shadow work is one of my favorite things I do. And it's related to a lot of that stuff we were talking about our early childhood. And essentially, what starts to happen is, anytime we have a negative or an adverse experience, our bodies, our minds, our hearts are really good at adapting to that system and learning to protect us in any way. And oftentimes what shadow work really is it's bringing to our awareness, so kind of bringing into the light out of the shadow, right? Patterns and programming and protective mechanisms and beliefs we have that are actually running our behavior that we don't even realize. And so a lot of times guys will come to me to do shadow work when they're like, I keep doing this thing in my relationship or with my health or with my life, and I don't know why. I don't want to be doing it because it hurts. It hurts my partner or it hurts me, but I keep doing it. So what's going on there? That's often one of the strongest signs that there's some kind of shadow material. There's some kind of belief or script or emotional content we haven't yet processed from early in our life that is causing us to take these actions without us realizing it. And the more we become conscious of that, again, the more choice we have of, oh, I realize now I get so triggered in my relationship. I have this huge reaction, right? Anytime I get feedback from my partner, because it connects to when I was a kid, this thing happened and it was so painful. My body, my heart, my mind want to do anything possible to avoid that again. So unconsciously, it's doing all this stuff to try to prevent that from happening again. So shadow work is realizing, oh, that's what's driving this behavior. So what I want to go back do is often, I kind of say this word metabolize. So take the old painful content or beliefs and work through it in a way where it no longer has a grip on us in the same way. And we just have more freedom of choice, right? We have more freedom for how we want to consciously respond in the moment rather than these old behaviors causing us to unconsciously just react, where we get triggered by something and suddenly we become a whole different person. The exciting thing about the work right now is there is more and more support coming in for young boys and teenage boys and young adult men. Because they do need it. Yeah, right. Like it's a huge gap in our culture right now. And in most, particularly indigenous traditions around the world, there's a very known thing where there's actual rites of passage to help boys step into manhood, where they get support and accountability and teaching from the elders in the community and help them say, hey, you're not a boy anymore. You have to take responsibility for your life. And here's how you do that. And all of that has been totally wiped out in most of our kind of industrialized cultures, where boys are just launched into the world and no one's really told them, hey, what is an emotion? What is a feeling? What does it mean to be in integrity? What is that sexual energy you're feeling in your body, and how do you handle it responsibly? A lot of us boys and kids these days are just raised by technology, right? YouTube and videos and advertising, and that has left a huge gap in why I think a lot of young men in particular have really been hurting. So these kind of rites of passage, young adult groups are really potent, but it really just doesn't stop. At any age, it can become impactful and meaningful. And where we can also get connected, another thing that's really, I think, been lost is for boys and really men of any ages to be connected to other men of different generations and ages.
That's good,
right? We used to spend, back in the day, you'd spend a lot more time with uncles and aunties and different people in your community of different ages, grandmas. And a lot of that has frankly been kind of wiped out in some pretty significant ways where we're at school with kids our own age, maybe a couple of teachers, but that's it. And so a lot of boys don't actually get to spend a lot of time with wise, mature adult men who can teach them how to be in the world and model for them more than anything else what it means to be a grounded, relaxed, present man in the world who knows how to access his emotions, who knows how to have a conversation, who knows how to deal with issues around integrity or values or boundaries. And again, when that connection isn't there, particularly for young boys, they have to turn to peers to try to find it, and that almost never works. But the other direction also works too, where it's been a joy. Often I'll see older men to get connected to that youthful energy and be around young men or young adults who still have that kind of zest for life. Reminds them of like, oh yeah, there's still so much I can experience. And so there's so much benefit to kind of breaking down a lot of these age gaps. I have seen in groups that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the most extreme thing all the time, but even, a decade or two, life phases. I became a parent about 6 years ago, and I'm in a couple of different men's groups. And one of the most incredible things for me was being in groups with men who were already on the other side of kind of having launched their kids. Their kids were out in the world as adults, and they had done the whole journey I was just about to step on. So as I freaked out about different stuff, I had older men to turn to who could say, oh yeah, this is what happened for me at this phase of life, and this is what happened for me, and here's what worked for me. And it was so relaxing to me to have kind of mentors in that sense who could guide me and offer me counsel and advice and make me feel not so freaked out as a new parent, right? Oh my God, I broke my kid or whatever. And they're like, no, I've done that before. It's fine. They're going to be okay. I'm like, oh, okay. Wow. I didn't know.
So Jason, so now since you have a child, can you say it's a girl, boy? Is it
I have two now. Yeah. I have a young daughter and a young boy.
boy? The good thing about it is now you as a parent, you could bring your child up, well, both really, the girl and the boy. A lot of people, just like you said earlier, do not have that. But you have these different groups that you start. Education starts at home. We first spoke, right?
Yeah.
Education starts at home.
So true.
It starts at home. So you had that within you. That's great. So he would learn how he will learn about himself, how he should value himself, respect himself, and respect others, right? Respect others.
Yeah.
And
and I'm connected to, a bunch of men in my community that'll also get to be mentors for him, right? That can teach him and show him things that I don't necessarily know how to do. That feels really important and something I'm super excited about.
Okay, I don't think we talked about the man box. What is the man box, and what is the biggest negative impact on men's health today? Yeah, I thought, what is the man box?
The man box is this term that was coined a couple decades ago in the Bay Area. And it's really just this idea that in our culture and most cultures, there's a set of expectations, like literal check boxes on behavior and traits that we have to check off to be considered a man. And if we don't fall inside that box of those behaviors, we're considered less than a man, a boy, a child, or whatever. A wimp. You can think of all the different things boys in particular would say in a locker room. And the biggest one, I mean, there's many of them, but the biggest frame is a man is invulnerable, right? That to be a man means to be invulnerable. You never show weakness. You never cry. You never ask for help. You're tough as nails. No matter what, you pick yourself up by your bootstraps and move forward. And that one's really damaging. Along with, other ones, like one I've seen massively impact men that's actually pretty crazy, is that if you're a man and sex is available to you, you should take it. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you as a man. And that creates all kinds of distorted expectations for men that end up in experiences they don't actually want to be in, right? That don't feel great to them or don't feel safe in. But, never crying, never asking for help, being tough, figuring things out alone, making as much money as you can. These are just some of the different expectations that we put on men. And it creates this kind of pressure for us to be a certain way. And the biggest one out of them tends to be yeah, do all that in isolation, right? Don't ever rely on anyone else. I work with guys all the time who this is an actual badge of honor to them. I don't need anyone, right? I don't need anybody in my life. Totally self-sufficient. And I'm tough, right? Is often where this kind of comes from. And my honest feedback to those men that is very challenging for guys is that I don't care who you are as a man, how tough you are, how strong you are, how independent you are. There will be a time in your life, it comes for all of us, where your body
Mm-hmm.
will fail you through sickness, illness, accident, or just old age. And in those moments, we have to turn to who do I have around me to support me?
That's
And
true.
that ability to surrender and receive love and care is so edgy for a lot of men. And what I tell them is start building those relationships now, because you never know when that thing is going to come where you're actually going to need people. And the shift from doing it all alone, keeping it all inside, like I said, has massive mental, emotional, and physical consequences for men, where, it's something like 3 out of every 4 suicides these days are men. It hits men the hardest in a lot of ways. And it accumulates in men as well as we get older. Autoimmune disorders, issues with our lower back, our heart, these things are all related in some sense. And connection and community is one of the greatest kind of medicines against that in some pretty substantial ways that, okay, I have people I can rely on that know me, and I don't have to go around carrying all this stress in my body and in my heart. And that's a very real thing. So many men do. And learning to bring that forward and ask for help, ask for support is a total game changer and allows us to become more effective. Frankly, as men, we can create more of the things we want to create. We can live longer. And we just honestly feel a little bit happier, a little
You
bit more
should.
enjoy in life
Uh-huh.
without having to take on all this burden all the time that so many guys do of, I can't let anyone know that I'm struggling or hurting or whatever that might
Mm-hmm.
be. Even just the simple thing, so many men internalize their pain as something they just have to push through. So what's one of the great challenges for a lot of men? Getting men to go to the doctor when there's something wrong with them, right? So many guys are resistant to that. And what could be, an easy fix often snowballs into something far more dangerous.
But why is that? I'm sorry, but why is that they're afraid to go to the doctors? You're not Superman. No one is super.
What bursts the bubble of that, right? For a lot of guys, the feeling is I need to be invulnerable to be a man. If there's something wrong with me, what if I need help? What if I have to go in for a surgery and I can't work for 2 weeks? Or, who knows? And that there's a lot of fear around that for men. And so we'll just avoid it as long as possible. And I've done it before and I've gotten much better about it. And then the other thing I'll just say around this is a lot of this starts at a very young age for boys in particular, where we're often raised differently than women. And
Right.
not only by our families, but often, the culture of boys. It's
Society. Right.
changed, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this feeling of, oh, you're fine, get up, you're tough, stop crying, just get back at it, right? And, there's some usefulness to that, but often it comes at the expense of what we tend to teach boys from a very young age is whatever you're feeling in your body, override it with your head. Oh, you're not hurt. It's
Yeah.
okay. Get up. You're going to be fine. You can figure that out. And why that's so damaging is what happens as we become adults is we have no experience and no vocabulary often for what's happening in our bodies, what we're feeling, let alone how to express that and what to do with that. And so when we have intense feelings inside of us, we don't know how to communicate them. We don't know how to label them. What do most men do? Okay, I'm not feeling good inside. I don't know why. So to change that, I'm going to reach for a beer. I'm going to smoke some weed. I'm going to go out and try to have sex. I'm going to eat food. I'm going to watch TV or numb out or overwork. We try to change our dysregulated internal state by overriding it with something on the outside, which ultimately doesn't actually fix the problem and can become, some of these more damaging addictions that a lot of men experience.
Chase, I want to ask you this too. You talk about different things, weed, drinks, also they can explode and do, you know, beating up their girlfriends or do violent
Rage.
other, these two other
Uh-huh.
violent things too. It's in you. You have to let it out some kind of way, and you can't talk to anyone, right? And all this is inside of you.
Yeah, totally. And it's one of the unfortunate other pieces of the man box that
Mm-hmm.
one of the only emotions men are allowed to feel and is considered manly is rage. He can explode in rage, right? That's an
Mm-hmm.
okay one for men to feel. But anything else, fear, shame, disgust, like, no, 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 vulnerability, grief, can't do that as a man.
Well,
So
I'm gonna ask you this. I'm sorry, I mean to interrupt. But when they explode, how do they feel? Because you talk to men, how do they feel afterwards? After they
most
let
men
it
feel
out in a
tremendous,
negative way?
yeah, most men feel tremendous amounts of shame and
Okay.
self-loathing. And then that's so painful to feel,
Mm-hmm.
they'll actually try to cover it up with more anger and more rage. And so it becomes a really vicious cycle in a sense. And that teaching men emotional literacy and nervous system regulation, there's a huge difference between a man exploding in rage and it being very aggressive and
Uh-huh.
unsafe and a man who literally is strong enough to hold his own emotions and say, baby, I'm feeling really angry right now. My shoulders are on fire. I'm so upset. Just that. The ability to just name that as a man makes you 10,000 times safer to be
As a
around.
man, it's like as a man, not as a wimp.
Yeah, that's super manly to me because it means, oh, my emotion isn't stronger than me. I'm stronger than my emotion. I can hold my
Right.
anger. I can say I have anger right now, but it doesn't have me. I have it, right? And I can express that in a safe way. And I've talked to a lot of women over the years and what they often say is, yeah, the scariest, most dangerous man is the man who's not even aware of what's happening inside. And she's
Uh,
like, "Are you mad with me?" And he's like, "No." That's like, oh, wow, red alert, get out of here. Because if he's not even aware of what's going on inside of him, how am I safe? Because he could just explode in any given moment. So this capacity, they call it interoception, right? We all know, we've heard of proprioception, which is like awareness of our body in space. Interoception is just awareness of what's happening inside of us.
but does
And
that go
that's where,
back to? Oh, I'm sorry. I have to put this in real quick. Does
yeah,
that
it's
go back
great.
to you talked earlier about it's their problem? I'm not the problem. When they say, "Oh, no,
Yeah.
nothing's wrong. I'm okay," goes back to that. I don't have to. That's like
Yeah.
you said. The women would say that they do not recognize it, that they have do not recognize they have a problem, and it goes back to, well, she's the problem or he's the problem. I'm okay. And that is really, really dangerous. It's like you were saying, that's
Very dangerous.
extremely dangerous.
Yeah, and to acknowledge that, hey, I get triggered around certain things. And yeah, I have
Uh-huh.
a temper and I'm working on that. That doesn't make you less of a man. To me, that makes you more of a man because it means you're taking responsibility for
Uh-huh.
yourself and your life. And I know I sure like to be around men who are taking responsibility for themselves. It feels great. It inspires me to take responsibility for myself. And there's kind of this upward momentum to it. And frankly, it feels better also, just that, oh, I have agency and control over my life versus there's nothing more disempowering than feeling like I have no control over my anger. It's just this thing that comes in that I can't deal with. Wait, it feels totally different when it's like, oh, yeah, okay, I know there's this thing that happens inside of me. I'm learning some tools and techniques for how to manage it. I can take my anger to my trusted friends. I can hit a pillow. Like, doesn't mean I have to dissociate from it. It just means I have to learn to healthily embrace and
Healthy.
express it in safe ways.
Do you think it's really getting around the groups? I want to ask you about what are some of the other groups that you do for men, and what's next for you?
Sure. What I'd say is I'm most passionate about getting men into men's groups, and there's lots of variations for them. And a men's group is just basically you gather together with other trusted men and you go deep. So you go under the surface. You don't just watch sports or talk about the game or do an activity. You talk about what's happening inside of you. Very simple. What you want in the world, what's in the way, and what's happening inside of you. And that is so empowering for men. And so me in particular, right now, two of the biggest groups I lead I have one called the Heart of Shadow, which is a pretty intensive men's group that's all about this shadow work, where we meet together online and then we actually meet and retreat to do very deep body-based work to move through some of this old emotional content. And then I also have another one called Men's Group Experience, which is just online and kind of more of an introduction. So it's like a 12-week journey where you get to experience what it means to go under the surface with 5 other guys and get real about life. And then even beyond me, there are lots of different men's organizations and men's groups out there right now because the need is high. We're at a moment in our culture where it's becoming pretty clear men are suffering and don't quite have the training and tools we need. It's not that we're broken. It's not that we're toxic. It's not that there's anything wrong with us. It's just oftentimes we haven't received the training we need to be effective fathers, effective husbands in the world in these important ways. So all the different things I do are just versions of that training. Let's get you connected to other men and let's train you the skills you need to be able to create the life you want. Mental health is becoming much more common
For
coverage.
the men.
Yeah, in that men do need this. I don't know if men's groups will be covered by that anytime soon, but I do know they're just starting to show up everywhere. And it does something different, right? It's different than a coaching relationship. It's different than even a therapeutic relationship because it's peer-based, right? You're working with peers. And for a lot of guys, actually, that's where some of our deepest wounding comes from, is being bullied, being ostracized by other boys and men. So where a men's group can be really healing is it can start to rewrite that narrative that, okay, there are men who have my back in the world. So I don't constantly have to be armored up because of the threats. I got people that'll watch me, that care about me, that love me. And that is so relaxing to male nervous systems. And turns out, what I've seen over this decade or so of doing this work is men's relationships improve, their connections to their intimate partners, their connections to their kids, they make more money, they get raises, their health gets better. All of this starts to happen when they learn to take responsibility for their emotions and their wounding and get connected to other men and get the skills they need to start bringing themselves more forward in life.
I said earlier about the health insurance. I don't know what they have for men, but what you are doing is great. And where can they reach you though? You have a website or?
Yeah, if you're vibing on this and you're like, okay, I'm curious, you can go to my website, evolutionary.men. And on there, I have my own podcast where I talk pretty much exclusively about men's work and men's groups. If you kind of like and just want to hear more of what I'm up to, all my programs are listed on there. There's a contact form on there. You can reach out to me and say, hey, here's what's going on in my life. And honestly, what I suggest is reach out. You don't even have to work with me. All right. I'm well connected now in the network. So if you want to find a men's group local or don't even know where to get started, just reach out and I can at least give you the next steps to take. Might be with me, might not be with me. But if you're a man out there listening, I would say you don't have to do it alone. You do not have to do it all alone. And life can get a lot better when you start to get connected to other men.
Healthier too, right? Healthier,
yes, better,
healthier, relationship-wise and everything else.
Exactly.
Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on the show. This has been an experience for me and other women too, where we can have a better understanding of each other. And not quick to judge, oh, he's this way or he's that way. There's no help. I mean, there hasn't been a help for the men. But you came along and you're doing this, you're helping them. So there is hope. There's hope, man, there's hope. Thank you so very much, Jason, for being on the show, okay? You take care now.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
For our viewers at home watching, if you like what you see, subscribe to The Jocelyn Moore Show. Want to be a guest on that show? Head over to our website, www.jmentertainment.info. On the homepage, click on About and follow directions to be a guest. If you have any questions about today's show or past or future shows, just click Contact on our website and submit a message. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, take care and keep watching.